I'm Victoria, I'm a child psychiatrist and parent coach, and I'm also a mum. And today's video is going to be all about why it's important to look after yourself when you're a parent, why it really matters, why it's really worth taking time out for it. I know it's really difficult, it's very difficult for every single parent I talk to, and I think it's really important to talk about it and just give yourself that permission. So, this is what I'm going to be talking about today. And of course, if you like my videos, if you like my blog posts, please do sign up to my email list so you get them in your emails every week. And if you like some extra content, I also have a wonderful Facebook group full of lovely mums where I answer questions, I do lives and other things, so please join that. Otherwise, stay tuned and I'll talk a bit why it's important to look after yourself. One of the things that parents constantly ask me about is actually about their own anxieties, about how stressful things are for them, about how to decrease that anxiety so they can just parent kind of in a calmer way with, approach their children in a much calmer way. And this is the hardest thing. And I think that looking after yourself is the most important thing when it comes to tackling your own anxiety, actually. And that's one of the reasons it's so, so important. And kind of how does that work? Well, first of all, I talk about the four essentials, and one of those things is about kind of creating a safe base for your child, as a parent. But actually, if you're not feeling safe yourself, like if you don't have that feeling of safety at home, that feeling that everything is kind of sorted in the way that works for you, how can you create that feeling of safety for your child? It's really, really difficult. And ultimately, you remain part of the safe base setup for quite a long time, for even adolescents, to be honest. So if you're not feeling safe, it's really hard for them to feel safe. And that's just not about physical safety, it's also about feeling just contained in an emotional sort of sense. And that kind of leads us on to the sensitivity. So there is, there's research showing that if you're very tired, if you're very stressed, it is harder for you to be sensitive to your child's needs. It's just how it is. That's just, you know, that is just how our brain works, because it's quite difficult to notice all the little cues when you are feeling stressed, low, or, tired yourself. It is very, very hard. And I think taking time to improve that, and I'll talk a little bit about how to do that in one of the blog posts later on in the month, about how to really work on creating that sense of well-being for yourself. And it's different for everyone. It's really, really different for everyone, which is what I'm going to talk about in one of the blog posts I do later on this month. But if you can get yourself to a better level, you will be able to be more sensitive, you will be able to respond to the cues better, and it will just be easier. Everything will be easier for you. So again, another really good reason to look after yourself. The third thing is really about setting boundaries. And a lot of parents get in touch with me about problems with setting boundaries. They're trying to set boundaries, the child doesn't listen, or they just totally ignore them, or they sort of stick with it and then they decide not to stick with it, and it's really difficult for them to kind of just get their life going. These can be things like about going to school, or nighttime kind of bedtime routine, or being off electronics. It's very difficult to be consistent with boundaries when you are tired, when you're not at your best, because especially if you're starting to implement a boundary, you've kind of got to be at your best. And if you're not at your best, it's very difficult to stay consistent with it, because, if you're having a very difficult day and you're very tired, it's much easier sometimes to go, do you know what, I'm just can't care about this right now. And then actually that just feeds into it becoming harder and harder to implement that particular boundary, because your child is thinking, oh, well, I got away with it that time. So, who says this is a boundary that I need to keep? So again, it just makes it easier for you to implement boundaries that matter to you, to stay consistent, and to kind of get over that initial hump of trying to introduce the boundary, so it just becomes kind of more of a routine thing. And I think lastly, it's all about the nurture. And if we only nurture our kids, if we spend kind of all our nurturing energy on our kids, what we're showing them is that nurture is kind of an external thing. And it's really important to model an internal sense of nurture, how you monitor your own feelings and respond to them and nurture yourself to make sure that you're okay. Because ultimately, that's the skill they've got to learn. Obviously, when they're little, even when they're growing up and they're adolescents, they're going to need some external nurture, and it's fine to have some external nurture. But learning that skill of nurturing yourself is really, really key for adulthood, for being in relationships in adulthood, and for just being a kind of a more steady, emotionally steady adult. So if you can model that and show how you respond to your own needs, it's a really good thing to do alongside obviously nurturing them. So please do take time out. As I said, this month I'm going to be doing a lot of content around looking after yourself, the different ideas for it, and what it really means. It's not all about taking a hot bath, and it's a very different thing looking after yourself. So I will be going through this stuff in blog posts, and if you do join the Facebook group, also in the post there.